My daughter-in-law and my son erased me from their lives as if I had never existed. Entire years, without a single phone call, without a single explanation. But the night my name appeared in a major magazine, she texted me immediately. "Family dinner tonight. We need to talk." So, I showed up. And the silence that fell over the table said everything. 4 years. 1,460 days of absolute absence. And now here I was, sitting across from them, at that Italian mahogany dining table they could have never afforded on an honest salary. Victoria was pouring me a glass of Cabernet in a crystal goblet that probably cost more than my shoes. She was smiling, that smile I knew all too well. Lips turned upward, eyes constantly calculating. Matthew, my son, my only son, avoided my gaze as if I were an uncomfortable ghost that had just materialized in their Gold Coast dining room. The kids were there. Harper, 12 years old now. The last time I saw her, she was 8, and she used to hug me with that pure strength that only children who love unconditionally possess. Mason, 9 years old, was hiding behind his plate of expensive pasta, looking at me with confused eyes. They did not recognize me. Or worse, they remembered me as the grandmother who never bothered to visit them. The chandelier above us reflected golden light onto the impeccable white tablecloths. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. It was like a stage set for a play, where I was the special guest, or the resident fool. "It is so wonderful to see you too, Margaret," Victoria said with that honeyed voice she always used right before asking for a favor. Her perfect French manicure brushed against my hand. I felt nauseous. We read the article in American Women in Business. Absolutely incredible. We never imagined that an abandoned old woman could get back on her feet, that someone they deleted like a junk file would have the nerve to succeed. Matthew finally spoke. "Mom, we are so proud of you." His voice sounded hollow, like those automated congratulations people give, out of sheer obligation. Proud. 4 years without a single call, and now they were proud. I sipped the wine. It was excellent. Some French vintage that I later looked up on my phone, $250 a bottle. It is funny how money changes the taste of things. Or maybe it just changes who sits at your table. "So, Mom." Victoria leaned forward, her diamond earrings catching the light, about that gallery down in Santa Fe. "The article mentioned that you are thinking of selling it. $3 million? My goodness, that is a fortune." There it was. The real reason behind this perfectly choreographed scene. It was not love. It was not regret. It was simple arithmetic. An old woman with money is a useful old woman. "It is a possibility," I replied, measuring every word like venom I could spit right back at them. Harper was looking at me strangely. "Mommy, is she the grandma who never wanted to see us?" The steak knife I was holding almost slipped from my fingers. Victoria rushed in. "Harper, sweetie, things get complicated between adults." But I interrupted her. For the first time in that evening of varnished lies, my voice rang out firm. "No, Harper, I wanted to see you. Every single day for 4 years, I wanted to see you." The silence that fell over the room then was different, heavy, dangerous, because they knew that I knew, and I knew that they knew that I knew. It was a hall of mirrors, where the truth reflected endlessly until someone finally had the courage to shatter the glass. Victoria composed herself quickly. "Well, the past is in the past. What matters is that we are together now. And we actually wanted to talk to you about something important, Margaret. At your age, managing so much money must be incredibly stressful. At my age, 71 years of experience, pain, and learning, and this 37-year-old woman was talking to me as if I were a senile old lady incapable of counting my own dollar bills. I let her continue. I let her weave her web of pretty words and fake concern, because I had learned something during these 4 years of forced solitude. Silence is the most powerful weapon when you know exactly what to say and you are just waiting for the perfect moment to detonate it. Matthew nodded at every word his wife said. My son, the boy I raised all by myself after his father died. The man who was now looking at me like a means to an end. But what they did not know, what they could not even begin to imagine while they poured me that expensive wine and smiled their shark-like smiles, was that I had also prepared for this dinner. Except my menu included a dish they never expected to taste, and the first bite was about to be served. Before we continue, if this story has you hooked, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss how this confession ends. It will change everything you thought you knew about family love. But to understand why that silence at the table hurt me so deeply, I need to take you back with me to the exact day my life split in two, March 17th. 4 years ago, an ordinary Thursday that turned into the day I ceased to exist for my own family. It was late, almost 9 o'clock in the evening. I was at my house, that 2-story colonial in Oak Park that William and I bought in 1982, back when the neighborhood was quiet and housing prices were still reasonable. The walls held 40 years of memories. The pencil marks measuring Matthew's height on the kitchen door frame, the coffee stain I could never quite scrub out of the sofa after that Christmas of 1997. Matthew arrived with Victoria. They were coming back from Lake Geneva, from looking at that property, those 20 acres William had inherited from his father, lakefront property that was now worth $1,200,000, according to the developers circling the area like polite vultures. "Mom, we need to talk," Matthew said. His tone was already different, distant, as if he had rehearsed those words in front of a bathroom mirror. Victoria sat in my living room with that queen-like posture she always had. Designer white slacks, a purse I recognized immediately, Louis Vuitton, at least $5,000. I wondered how they paid for it on Matthew's mid-level corporate salary. "Margaret," she began, not even waiting for my son to speak, "we need to sell the Lake Geneva property. It is an incredible opportunity. The developers are offering $1,200,000. I nodded slowly. It is a good offer, but that land has family history. Matthew's grandfather bought it with the sweat of his brow. Exactly, Victoria interrupted. History, the past. We live in the present, and in the present, we have 2 children, a house with a mortgage, and opportunities we cannot pass up just because of sentimentality. Sentimentality, that word struck me like a slap across the face. "What do you think, Matthew?" I asked my son directly. He shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, Victoria is right. It is a lot of money. We could buy a condo downtown, invest in her brother's business, secure the kids' college funds." Something in my chest tightened. Her brother's business? "What are you talking about?" Victoria smiled. That smile. "My brother Jason has an import company. With a $300,000 investment, we could be partners. The returns would be—" "No," I said simply. The air in the room shifted. "Excuse me?" Victoria stopped smiling. I said no. "That land is your father's legacy, Matthew. It is the only tangible thing left of him besides this house. If you want to sell it, that is your decision as the heir. But I am not going to give my blessing for you to throw it away on a business venture run by someone I barely know." Victoria stood up. "See? I told you she would interfere. She always does. She always wants to control us, to manipulate us with the memory of your dead father." The tears burned my eyes. "How dare you?" "Mom," Matthew finally spoke up, raising his voice. "Victoria is right. You have always wanted to control us. Ever since we got married, you have an opinion on everything. Where we should live, how we should raise the kids, what we should spend our money on. We are tired of it." I was speechless. My son, my own flesh and blood, saying that to me. "We need space," he continued, and the words sounded rehearsed, like a script. "Time to build our marriage without your influence." Influence? I am your mother. I helped you both when Harper was born, and you barely had enough money for diapers. I watched the kids every single time, and you always remind us of it," Victoria cut in sharply. "Every favor comes with an emotional price tag. We are in perpetual debt to you." The room was spinning. "If that is how you feel, if you think I am a burden, a nuisance, it is not that, Mom." Matthew stepped closer, but he did not reach out to touch me. "We just need some distance. Some time." "How much time?" Silence. "How much time, Matthew?" "As long as it takes." And just like that, like someone canceling a magazine subscription, like someone blocking a spam caller, they left. I heard them arguing about something in the driveway before the car pulled away. Victoria was talking fast, Matthew was nodding. That was the last time I saw my son for 4 years. I tried calling the next day. Blocked. I sent a text message. Delivered, but never read. I drove to their house in the suburbs. They did not open the door, even though I saw the curtains twitch. My grandchildren, Harper, Mason, gone, as if I had never been their grandmother. As if all those afternoons reading them stories, teaching them how to bake chocolate chip cookies, singing them lullabies, had been wiped out with a single click. Birthdays passed. Thanksgivings. Mother's Day. Me alone in that big house in Oak Park, brewing coffee that nobody drank, setting the table for ghosts. The depression rolled in like a thick fog. There were days I did not even get out of bed. Nights when I would dial Matthew's number just to hear the busy signal and remind myself that he existed somewhere, breathing the same air but choosing not to share it with me. But what they did not know, what they never could have imagined, was that William had left me something more than memories and a house in Oak Park. He had left me an ace up my sleeve, a forgotten place down in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that not even Matthew knew existed. And that place would become my resurrection, and their biggest miscalculation. There are secrets that weigh like stones in your stomach, and I was keeping one that not even my own son knew about. When William died 6 years ago, the cancer took him in 3 brutal months. It was so fast that we barely had time to mourn before we had to start sorting out the estate. The attorney, Mr. Arthur Hayes, called us into his downtown office, Matthew, Victoria, and me. The assets were clear. The Oak Park house was in my name, valued at roughly $800,000. The land in Lake Geneva was in Matthew's name, a direct inheritance from his paternal grandfather. Some savings that we split evenly, everything clean, everything legal. But Mr. Hayes asked me to stay for 5 minutes after they had left. "Margaret, there is something else," he said, closing the office door. He pulled out an old manila folder, the kind that smells like aged paper. "William entrusted this to me years ago. He said only you should know about it." Inside was a deed in my name, only in my name, for a commercial space in the historic downtown district of Santa Fe. Number 47 on Canyon Road, bought in 1987, back when Santa Fe was still a sleepy artistic town, before the heavy tourism and the wealthy collectors discovered it, before the real estate prices shot through the roof. It was his father's old woodworking shop, Mr. Hayes explained. William inherited it, but never used it. He rented it out to a local blacksmith for next to nothing, maybe $50 a month. When the blacksmith passed away in 2015, it sat empty. William told me, "If anything ever happens to me, this belongs solely to Margaret. Let her decide what to do with it. It is her freedom." Freedom. That word sounded so strange to me then, sitting in that office smelling of stale coffee and legal documents. "Why didn't he tell Matthew?" I asked. The lawyer looked at me with those eyes that have seen far too many families tear themselves apart over money. Because William knew his daughter-in-law, and he knew his son. He said, verbatim, "Matthew is a good man, but he has a weak character. Victoria plays him like a puppet. If they know about this place, they will force him to sell it for some stupid scheme, and Margaret will be left with nothing of her own." He made me swear to keep it a secret until after his passing. I guarded that secret like gold. I flew down to see the place once. A faded adobe building. Wooden doors eaten by termites, broken windows. Inside, it was all dust, rusted tools, and pigeons nesting in the rafters. A beautiful disaster, 15 feet wide by 60 feet deep, with original exposed wooden beams from the 1800s. I did not see the value in it back then. All I saw was work, problems, and expenses. So I left it there, locked up with a brand new padlock, waiting without knowing what for, until they erased me from their lives. The first few months after the abandonment were dark. I already told you about the depression. But there was a moment, a particularly cruel morning in July, when I woke up crying from a dream where Harper was asking me why I had abandoned her. I got up shaking. I made coffee. I sat in the kitchen watching the sunrise filter through the dirty windows I no longer had the energy to clean. And I thought, can I just stay here, slowly dying in this house full of ghosts, waiting for the day my son remembers he has a mother? Or can I do something with the gift William gave me, the one I did not understand at the time? Can I build my own life? I called Mr. haze at 8 o'clock in the morning. I want to do something with the space in Santa Fe. I do not know what, but something. He put me in touch with a young architect, Chloe Davis, 32 years old. A butterfly tattoo on her shoulder, wild ideas and an energy I had forgotten even existed. Chloe went to look at the space and came back with her eyes shining. Margaret, this place is a gem. Perfect location. Authentic historic structure. Santa Fe is exploding with cultural tourism. We can do something incredible here. I do not have a lot of money, I warned her. We have creativity. That is worth more. I invested my entire life savings, $50,000. Everything I had saved over the years, from teaching knitting classes, from baking pies for Thanksgiving, from cutting corners on groceries. Chloe designed Rustic Roots Gallery, a gallery and boutique for contemporary Southwestern and Native American art. We salvaged the original wooden beams. We painted the walls stark white so the artwork would pop. We reached out to local artists, Navajo weavers, Pueblo ceramicists, young painters who had nowhere to display their work. I learned everything from scratch. At 68 years old, I took courses on social media: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Chloe taught me with endless patience. Look, you upload the photo here, you put the hashtags here. I would laugh at myself, stumbling through the technology. But I learned. I polished my customer service skills for the wealthy tourists flying in from the East Coast. Good morning, this piece is entirely handmade. The words felt clumsy at first, but they came out. I worked 12 hours a day. 70 years old, and I was sweeping floors, arranging displays, making sales, smiling, while on the inside I was still bleeding for my lost grandchildren. But something happened, slowly, like a plant growing without you noticing, until one day it bursts into bloom. The first month, we sold $1,000 worth of art. The second month, $3,000. By the sixth month, a couple from New York bought 3 pieces for $20,000. Artists started seeking me out. Local magazines came to visit us. A travel blog mentioned us. Then another. And another. And Rustic Roots Gallery grew like the secret he had left me. Quietly, without making a fuss, but with deep, firm roots. 3 years later, the gallery was generating $400,000 a year in revenue. I had 4 employees on payroll, permanent exhibitions for 30 different artists, contracts with boutique hotels that bought our pieces for their lobbies. And I, Margaret, the abandoned old woman who used to cry in her unwashed pajamas, had become a prominent business owner. But my son knew nothing about this. Nobody from my old life knew, and that, their complete ignorance, would become my sweetest revenge. Loneliness has its own unique sound. It is the wall clock ticking away the seconds in an empty house. It is the sound of your own breathing, much too loud in the dark. It is the phone that never rings. The first 6 months after they erased me were a silent hell I would not wish on my worst enemy. I turned 68 all by myself. I bought a single cupcake from the bakery down the street. Mrs. Higgins asked me, "Is your family not coming over, Margaret?" I smiled, that kind of smile that makes your facial muscles ache. They are very busy. She understood. There are silences that scream the truth. Thanksgiving arrived. I put a small turkey in the oven, because habit outweighed the sadness. I sat there eating alone, listening to the muffled sounds of the neighbors' football games and large families cheering, and I thought, this is what it feels like to be dead while you are still breathing. Mother's Day was even worse. On that day, the entire country is a reminder of exactly what you have lost. Flowers in every grocery store. Restaurants packed with multi-generational families. I stayed locked inside, watching old reruns on television, eating stale muffins, but Santa Fe saved me. Chloe became more than a business partner. She was the daughter I never had. She would force me to eat when I forgot to. She would drag me out of the pit when the sadness threatened to pull me under. "Margaret, today we are driving out to the reservation to look at some textiles," she would say. I will not take no for an answer. Those road trips to artisan communities reconnected me with something I had completely forgotten. The world is huge and beautiful, extending far beyond the pain of a broken family. In a small pueblo outside the city, I met Maria, an 83-year-old ceramicist with hands twisted by arthritis, but still capable of creating pottery that seemed to breathe. She showed me her small studio, filled with red clay and tradition. My kids moved to the East Coast, she told me while kneading the clay. 30 years without seeing them. But I have this, she said, pointing to her pots. I have my art, and as long as I create, I exist. I broke down crying right there, in that dusty studio. She hugged me with those earth-stained hands. Pain is just clay, ma'am. You either mold it, or it buries you. You decide. I decided to mold it. I signed up for art appreciation workshops at the local community center. Me, a woman who had only finished high school, sitting among college students, learning about Southwestern murals, about modernism, about how art tells the stories that words simply cannot. I took an advanced business class at the community college. We were a group of older folks learning about profit margins and LLCs. Yes, I had learned. I was still learning. That it is never too late until you finally give up. Social media was my own personal battlefield. Chloe set up an Instagram account for the gallery. Now you just post photos of the artwork, she explained, me holding the smartphone with trembling hands. Here, like this? Oh no, I moved. It came out blurry. But I persisted. Photo after photo, learning about filters, hashtags, and stories. The first followers were Chloe's friends, then the tourists who visited the shop, then wealthy collectors from Dallas, Los Angeles, and Chicago, discovering unique American art. One day, 8 months after we opened, a travel influencer with 200,000 followers visited Santa Fe. She wandered into the gallery. She fell in love with some hand-carved wooden sculptures. She posted story after story, showing off the pieces. "This place is magic," she wrote. The next morning, we had a line of tourists wrapping around the block. I hired Sarah, an art history major from the State University. Then Tyler, a young artist who needed a day job. Then Emily, an accountant who finally put my chaotic finances in order. The gallery grew like ivy. First year, $100,000 in sales. Second year, $200,000. Third year, $400,000. Artists were coming to me now. "Margaret, I just finished this new series. Would you be interested?" And I, a woman who barely knew the difference between watercolor and oil paint 3 years ago, could now look with a trained eye and know exactly what would sell. I made connections. Boutique hotels wanted exclusive pieces for their lobbies. High-end restaurants bought our artisanal tableware. Galleries in Scottsdale and New York reached out for partnerships. At some point, I stopped crying myself to sleep every night. I stopped staring at my phone waiting for text messages that were never going to arrive. I stopped imagining conversations with grandchildren I would probably never truly know. It was not a complete healing. The pain never entirely goes away. It just learns to live in the passenger seat without grabbing the steering wheel. I turned 70. Chloe organized a surprise party at the gallery. 30 people, artists who had become dear friends, tourists who returned every season, neighboring shop owners who knew me by name. I blew out the candles on a beautiful cake baked by the local pastry chef. Everyone sang happy birthday, and I realized something that shook me to my core. I had built a brand new family, not by blood, but by choice. But a small, stubborn part of me still harbored that original ache. My real grandchildren, Matthew, the family that had thrown me away. Sometimes I would look at old photographs. Harper at 5 years old, in her princess costume. Baby Mason asleep on my chest. Matthew as a little boy, back when he still looked at me like I was his superhero. What had they been told? Did they think I just stopped loving them? What kind of story had Victoria spun to justify my complete absence? Those questions haunted me on my sleepless nights. But I kept working, because the work silenced the questions. The work gave me purpose. The work proved to me that Margaret had not just sat by the door like an abandoned dog waiting for its owner to come home. And then, 4 years after that cursed March evening, my name appeared in a national magazine, and everything changed all over again. November. A crisp autumn breeze in Santa Fe. I was arranging a new contemporary photography exhibit when Chloe came running in, holding something in her hands. "Margaret, you are not going to believe this." It was the December issue of American Women in Business, a serious magazine, the kind they leave out in corporate waiting rooms and university lounges. On the cover, wedged between tech CEOs and hedge fund managers, was a headline that made my heart stop. Margaret, from forgotten widow to cultural entrepreneur at 71. We flipped open the magazine with trembling hands. Pages 34 through 38. A full 5-page spread. Photos of the gallery. A photo of me smiling, surrounded by sculptures. An interview they had conducted 2 months prior, which I honestly thought would never see the light of day. I read my own words printed in glossy ink. At 67, I found myself completely alone. I could have stayed home feeling sorry for myself. I chose to create. Art saved me when my own family could not or would not. I did not mention any names. I did not speak directly about the abandonment. But anyone reading between the lines would understand. The article talked about the gallery, about its commercial triumph. And right there, in the second-to-last paragraph, was the sentence that would change everything. She is currently considering offers to sell Rustic Roots Gallery, which is valued at roughly $3 million, in order to retire and focus on personal philanthropic projects. $3 million, printed in bold black letters, published, out in the open. Is it true you are thinking of selling? Chloe asked, looking concerned. A gallery group out of Dallas is interested. We talked. Nothing is set in stone. It was the truth, but it was not my main priority. I liked working. It kept me feeling alive. What I did not expect was for that magazine to have national distribution, for it to be sold at Barnes & Noble bookstores across the country, for the article to go viral on LinkedIn and Facebook, for it to reach the Gold Coast of Chicago. That night I was in my small apartment in Santa Fe, the one I rented so I did not have to constantly fly back and forth to Oak Park. I was brewing chamomile tea. It was 9:47 in the evening. I know that because I glanced at the clock on the microwave when my cell phone vibrated. Unknown number. A text message. I opened it without thinking. Margaret, it has been so long. We are so incredibly proud to read about you in American Women in Business. Matthew and I really want to reconnect. Family dinner tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. Our new penthouse downtown. The kids miss you so much. Please come. It is important that we talk. I will text you the address. Love, Victoria. The teacup slipped from my hand. The scalding liquid splashed across my feet. I did not even feel it. 4 years, 1,460 days of absolute silence. And now, 12 hours after a magazine printed the words, $3 million, she was texting me. She did not mention the ignored birthdays, the lonely Thanksgivings, the Mother's Days where I cried until my tear ducts ran dry. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not offer a single explanation. Just, it is important that we talk. I sat down on the kitchen floor, right there among the spilled tea and the shattered porcelain, and I laughed, a bitter, jagged laugh that clawed its way up from a very dark place in my chest, because I understood it with brutal clarity. I had never stopped existing to them. I had simply stopped being useful. I had lacked monetary value. But now that a magazine certified that I was worth millions, suddenly they missed me. I spent the entire night wide awake, staring at the ceiling, calculating. Because 4 years alone had taught me how to think with cold precision. I could ignore the message, block the number, go on with my shiny new life. I could go there and confront them, scream out all the pain I had stockpiled. Or I could go and play the very game they had started. Only this time, I knew the rules far better than they did. I called Attorney Hayes at 7 in the morning. Arthur, I need a massive favor, and I need it fast. Tell me, I need you to investigate my son and my daughter-in-law. Everything. Bank records for the last 4 years. Real estate, debts, investments. I want to know exactly what they did with the $1,200,000 from the lake house. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, Margaret, are you absolutely sure? I have never been more sure of anything in my life. What I find is going to hurt you. Nothing can hurt me more than the pain of being erased, Arthur. Right now, all I want is the truth. I hired a private investigator, Frank Mitchell, ex-detective, serious, efficient, very expensive. His 2 weeks of work cost me $10,000, and what he uncovered handed me the exact ammunition I needed. But that would come later. First, I had to attend that dinner. I had to sit at that table. I had to look them dead in the eye and let them talk. Because I had learned a crucial lesson while building my little empire from the ground up. Patience is power. And they were about to find out that the helpless old woman they thought they could manipulate was dead and gone. In her place stood me, Margaret, businesswoman, survivor, and ready to collect on every single tear they had forced me to shed. I put on my best clothes, not flashy designer brands, but elegant, black linen trousers, a burgundy silk blouse, the silver turquoise necklace I bought myself to celebrate my first successful year, comfortable yet expensive-looking shoes. I did my makeup with care, not to impress them, but to feel bulletproof. I flew into Chicago and took a town car into the city, an hour in traffic thinking exactly about what I would say, what I would keep to myself, what I would expose. I arrived in the Gold Coast, a luxury high-rise. A uniformed doorman greeted me. "Which apartment, ma'am?" "Penthouse." "B, of course. A penthouse." The elevator shot up. My heart rate did the same. And when I rang the doorbell, I braced myself for the most important performance of my entire life. The door swung open, and there was Victoria. She was still beautiful, 37 years old and impeccably maintained. Brunette hair with flawless blonde highlights. A fitted black dress that quietly screamed old money. Those diamond earrings catching the light like fake little stars. "Margaret, it is so wonderful to see you." She hugged me. Her perfume was incredibly expensive. Chanel. I recognized the scent because a wealthy client from Dallas always wore it. The hug was technical, entirely devoid of warmth. Like hugging a department store mannequin. "Come in, come in." Matthew is just finishing up tossing the salad. Matthew cooking? My son, who previously could not even boil a pot of water. The apartment was obscenely elegant. Italian marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, furniture I recognized from high-end design catalogs, artwork on the walls that looked important but were probably just expensive reproductions. In the living room were my grandchildren. Harper, 12 years old, tall, with her father's hair, staring at me with obvious confusion. Mason, 9, hiding behind an iPad, refusing to look up. "Kids, come say hello to your grandmother," Victoria ordered in her syrupy voice. "Hi," they said in unison. Automated, emotionless. It hurt more than a direct insult. They did not know me. I was a total stranger in their lives. 4 years is a lifetime to a child. Matthew walked out of the kitchen. My son, 42 years old now. He had put on some weight. His hairline was receding. There was a deep exhaustion in his eyes. "Mom." He hugged me. This hug felt slightly different. Full of shame, perhaps. "Matthew, you look great. You look different." 4 years changes people. An awkward silence filled the room. "Well, let's sit down and eat." Victoria broke the tension. I made something very special. The dining table belonged in a magazine spread, an immaculate white tablecloth, fine bone china with gold rims, crystal wine glasses that must have cost what I used to make in a month back when I was cleaning houses in my 30s. Victoria poured the red wine. That French Cabernet, the one I Googled later. $250 a bottle. "To family," Victoria toasted, raising her glass. "To reunions." We clinked glasses. I took a sip. The wine was spectacular. It tasted like money and beautifully packaged lies. Dinner began. Seafood pasta, artisanal sourdough bread, everything expensive, everything flawless. We made small talk, the unpredictable Chicago weather, the terrible traffic on the Kennedy Expressway. Harper talked about her new school, an elite private academy on the North Shore, $4,000 a month in tuition, easily. "And how is your gallery, Margaret?" Victoria finally pivoted to the point. "We read the article. It is just incredible. We never imagined you had such an entrepreneurial spirit. Entrepreneurial spirit. As if it had been a cute little hobby and not a matter of sheer survival." "I have had a lot of free time on my hands these past few years," I said, looking her dead in the eye. When you do not have a family to take care of, work fills the void nicely. Matthew coughed. Victoria smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Well, sometimes distance is necessary for personal growth, she said smoothly. We have grown a lot too. Look at this place. Matthew got a major promotion. He is the regional manager at his firm now. We are doing incredibly well for ourselves. A lie. I knew the absolute truth. The private investigator had verified it. Matthew was still in the exact same mid-level position, making the same mediocre salary of $60,000 a year. They were definitely not paying for this penthouse on his paycheck. That is wonderful, I said, taking another sip of wine. And how did you manage the down payment on this place? It must have cost a fortune. $3 million, Victoria answered quickly, puffing with pride. We put down $1,200,000. We financed the rest. $1,200,000. The exact amount the property in Lake Geneva had sold for. What a coincidence, I said softly. William's land was worth exactly that amount. The atmosphere shifted, like the sudden drop in barometric pressure right before a severe thunderstorm. Yeah, well, we sold the land 3 years ago, Matthew finally spoke up. It was a smart investment to buy this place. The Gold Coast is premium real estate. And what did you invest the rest of the millions in? I asked casually. Like someone asking for the time, Victoria and Matthew exchanged a panicked glance. Well, we had some expenses, she said smoothly. The kids' private education, my brother's business required some upfront capital, a few lingering debts. What debts? Mom, things get complicated in business, Matthew went on the defensive. I do not really want to get into the financial weeds tonight, but I would love to hear about the weeds, I said, carefully placing my fork down, because I am very curious. $1,200,000 is a lot of money to burn through. Victoria dropped her fake smile. Margaret, you did not come over here to audit our finances. We invited you so we could reconnect as a family. Family? The word tasted like battery acid on my tongue. Now we are a family, after 4 years of radio silence? Mom, it is in the past. Matthew tried to calm the waters. The past is the past. For you, maybe? Do you know how many Thanksgivings I ate dinner alone? How many of my grandchildren's birthdays I missed? Harper was staring at me intently now, as if waking up from a trance. The kids missed you terribly. Victoria lied through her perfectly veneered teeth. But you never bothered to call. That is a lie. My voice raised an octave. You blocked my number. I drove to your house 20 times. You never answered the door. Mom, you are being dramatic, Matthew whispered harshly. The children are sitting right here. Good. Let them listen. Let them know the truth. Victoria stood up abruptly. I think you should leave. This was a huge mistake. Sit back down. I said it with a voice that tolerated absolutely no debate. Because if I walk out that door right now, you will never see me again. And trust me, you really want me to stay. She slowly lowered herself back into her chair. Why? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Why would we possibly want you to stay? I smiled. That cold smile I had practiced in the hotel mirror. Because you read the magazine. Because you know I have a $3 million asset in play. And because you invited me here to beg me for money, poorly disguised as a touching family reunion. The silence was absolute. That is not Matthew started. That is not what. That is not the truth. Matthew, look me in the eye right now and tell me you are not drowning in debt. My son could not hold my gaze. And right there, in that heavy, guilt-ridden silence, I knew I had them. And the real war was just beginning. Victoria recovered quickly. She always did. Like one of those inflatable punching bags that pops right back up no matter how hard you hit it. Fine, she said, throwing her hands up. You are right. Yes, we are strapped for cash. Is that a federal crime? We are family. Families help each other out. Family? I repeated the word that burned my throat. Where was my family when I turned 70 years old? Where was my family when I had pneumonia last winter and spent 3 days alone in the hospital? Matthew went pale. No, we did not know about that. Of course you did not know. Because you never asked. You never called. I ceased to exist to you until I existed in a glossy magazine with a large dollar sign printed next to my name. Harper was looking at her mother, completely bewildered. Mommy, you said Grandma did not want to see us. Harper, sweetie, go to your room, Victoria ordered sharply. No, I said firmly. Harper, you stay right where you are. Mason, you too. You both need to hear this. The kids froze in their seats. Nobody dared to cross me now. Victoria took a deep breath. Time for a new strategy. Look, Margaret, let's just be adults about this. There were misunderstandings. People needed space. But the past is the past. We are all sitting here today, wanting to rebuild our relationship. And yes, it is the truth, we are having some severe cash flow problems. This penthouse is bleeding us dry. The mortgage is $12,000 a month. The kids' tuition is another $4,000. Our fixed overhead is $30,000 every single month. Matthew only brings in $60,000 a year, you do the math. And what about your job? I asked. I stopped working when Mason was born. I dedicated myself to running the household, raising the kids. To the country club, the luxury salons, the long lunches with your girlfriends. Her eyes narrowed into slits. Do not you dare judge my life choices. I am not judging. I am merely observing. I am observing that you blew through over $1 million in 3 years, that you are living miles beyond your means, and that now you desperately need my help. Matthew finally chimed in. Mom, yes, we need your help, not just financially. We need your support, your guidance, your help to dig us out of this massive hole. It almost moved me, almost. And what exactly are you proposing? Victoria leaned forward, putting her elbows on the table, cards face up. Look, let's be practical. You are 71 years old. You do not have any other children. You do not have any other grandkids. Everything you have built will eventually go to Matthew anyway. So why make us wait? Help us out now, when we actually need it. We can set up joint investment accounts, secure the kids' trust funds, secure your own retirement, with us taking care of you as you get older. There it was. The grand master plan. They wanted me to hand over the cash right now. And in exchange, what? In exchange, we are a whole family again, Victoria said smoothly. The kids get their grandmother back. You get your family back. Everybody wins. I looked at my grandchildren. Harper was looking at me with William's eyes. Mason was chewing on a piece of bread, not entirely grasping the gravity of the conversation. How much do you need? I asked. Victoria smiled. A premature victory lap. With $2 million, we could pay off the mortgage entirely, roll the rest into a stable index fund, and the kids would be set for college. $2 million, I repeated, nearly the entire value of the gallery. But we will put the deed in both Matthew's and your name. Legally ironclad. It would be a family investment portfolio, not a handout. And the remaining $1 million? That is all yours, she said magnanimously. For you to live in total comfort, or reinvest, or whatever you want to do with it. It was brilliant in its sheer stupidity. They honestly believed I was going to swallow the hook. Let me think about it, I said calmly. Really? Matthew's face lit up with relief. But first, I have a quick question. Anything you want, Mom. What exactly happened to the $1,200,000 from the Lake Geneva property? The temperature in the room plummeted again. We already told you, Victoria answered for him. The down payment on this condo, living expenses, Jason's startup. Did Jason's startup go bankrupt? Silence, because I did some digging. I hired a private investigator, Frank Mitchell. Highly recommended professional. He cost me $10,000, but he was worth every single penny. Matthew turned as white as a sheet of paper. He found some fascinating things, I continued, pulling a stack of documents out of my leather tote bag. For instance, that the property sold for exactly $1,200,000, correct, but that right before you sold it, you and Victoria forged documents making it look like William had massive debts with private loan sharks, debts totaling $350,000 that had to be paid off immediately before the sale could clear. Victoria shot up from her chair. That is an outrageous lie. We do not have to sit here and listen to this. Sit down, I ordered, or I swear to God I will dial 911 right now. She slowly sat back down. Those loan sharks never existed, I continued. The promissory notes were entirely fabricated. My attorney reviewed them. William's signatures were forged using PDF software. The dates were physically impossible because William was already in the ground when he supposedly signed them. Matthew started to cry. The quiet, pathetic tears of a trapped man. The $350,000 was wired directly to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, registered under the name Victoria Ashley Reynolds. I have the wire transfer receipts right here. Harper, Mason, go to your rooms right now. Victoria tried one last time. No, I yelled. You stay. You need to know exactly who your mother is. The kids were terrified, but they stayed glued to their chairs. Besides, I pulled out more papers. I found email chains between Victoria and her sister, Ashley. Would you like me to read a few out loud? Victoria looked physically ill. I read from the printout. Ashley, I almost have my hands on the lake property. I am finally getting rid of the old bat. She was always the main issue. Matthew without his mommy is so much easier to control. Matthew was openly sobbing at the table. Oh, here is another good one. I told the kids their grandmother is losing her mind, that she is unsafe to be around. Matthew just went along with it because he is terrified I will divorce him. He is so spineless, it is actually hilarious. Harper stared at her mother in sheer horror. So, I said, sliding the papers back into my bag, before you ask me to write you a check, explain to me, where is my money? Because that money was my husband's legacy, and you stole it using forged legal documents. The silence that followed was the silence of a truth impossible to deny, and I was just getting warmed up. Victoria recovered with the desperate energy of a cornered wild animal. Those documents are fakes. Your investigator is lying to you. You can try to sue us, but you will never prove a thing in court. Are you sure about that? I pulled out my smartphone. Because Frank also managed to get his hands on some audio recordings. Do you remember your sister's birthday party 2 years ago? Someone accidentally left their phone recording on the patio table. Funny how life works out. I hit play. Victoria's voice rang out crystal clear through the phone's speaker. Of course I forged the loan documents. What else was I supposed to do? Matthew would never have agreed to sell if I had not convinced him we had imminent debts to pay off. William was an idiot for dying without setting up a proper trust. It was so easy to just slip a few extra pages into the stack. A woman's laughter echoed on the tape, probably Ashley. Victoria continued on the recording. And the stupid old woman will never figure it out. She is so deeply depressed, she does not even ask questions anymore. Matthew is terrified of her, so he completely cut her off. It worked out perfectly for me. I paused the audio. Harper was crying silently. Mason was hugging his sister, not entirely grasping the legalities, but knowing that something foundational had just been destroyed. There is plenty more, I said, without a hint of emotion. WhatsApp transcripts that Frank pulled from a cloud backup. Offshore bank transfers. Luxury shopping sprees in Miami using the money that was supposedly for an investment fund. A Rolex watch for $25,000. Hermes handbags. A summer trip to Europe last year that cost $40,000. Every number hit the table like a sledgehammer. But the best part, I continued, is that I tracked down the corporate filings for Jason's business. Do you know what Frank discovered? That there never was an import-export business. Jason drives for Uber. He has always driven for Uber. That $300,000 investment you supposedly gave him never existed. You kept that money, Victoria, in a private checking account. Hidden away from Matthew, too. My son slowly lifted his tear-stained face to look at his wife. Is it true? She did not answer. She did not have to. Where is that money, Victoria? Matthew asked, his voice cracking. I spent it, she snapped defensively. Keeping up this lifestyle is not cheap. Appearances matter in this city. Did you never realize that? You blew through $300,000 on appearances? Matthew yelled. I had never heard him raise his voice like that. It was not just me. It was for you too, for the kids, for your designer bags, your luxury vacations, your country club friends. I finished for him. Frank has the itemized breakdown. $15,000 in med spa treatments over 2 years. $10,000 on seasonal wardrobes. $8,000 a month dining out. The numbers rained down like hail, and while you were burning through my stolen inheritance, I glared at Victoria with a disgust I didn't know I was capable of feeling. I was eating canned beans in a tiny apartment in New Mexico. I was saving every single penny to keep the lights on at the gallery, working 12-hour shifts at 68 years old. I turned to face Matthew. And you? You knew. Maybe not the exact dollar amounts, but you knew the math did not add up. Did you never bother to ask? Did you never get suspicious? She told me that. I just trusted her. He stammered. You trusted her because it was easier than confronting her. Because you have always been weak, Matthew. And that is my fault. I raised you that way, by constantly shielding you from the world. Your father warned me about it. You are making him soft, Margaret. Someday, a woman is going to walk all over him, and he won't know how to fight back. Matthew wept like a toddler. My 42-year-old son, bawling in his $3 million penthouse, bought with stolen money. Harper suddenly spoke up. Grandma, we did not know anything about this. I know, sweetheart. You are victims in this too. They lied to you. They stole your grandmother from you. They taught you how to live inside a lie, Mason asked in a tiny voice. So you did want to see us? That question broke my heart into pieces. Every single day, my sweet boy. Every damn day. Victoria tried to regain control of the room. This is completely ridiculous. You are going to report us for forgery? Go right ahead. It will be your word against ours. And Matthew is your own son. Do you really want to see him rot in federal prison? No, I said calmly. I do not want to see Matthew go to prison. She smiled. A premature victory. I want something much better, I continued. I want justice. I want the truth. And I want my grandchildren. What? Victoria stood up. I know exactly what to do with this mountain of evidence, I said, tapping the folder. I can easily send both of you to a federal penitentiary. Forgery of legal documents, wire fraud, money laundering. My attorney says we are looking at 5 to 10 years behind bars. Minimum. Arthur Hayes plays golf with federal judges. This would get pushed through the docket very quickly. The silence in the room was pure, unadulterated panic. Or, I paused for dramatic effect. We can negotiate a settlement. What do you want? Victoria asked, entirely defeated. First, a divorce. Immediately. Matthew and you are getting separated. He will file for full physical custody of the children. You will not contest it. Is that a joke? I am not negotiating with you, Victoria. I am dictating the terms of your surrender. Shall I continue? She nodded, staring daggers at me. Second, this penthouse goes on the market tomorrow. Every single penny of the equity goes directly into an irrevocable trust fund for Harper and Mason's college tuition. I will be the sole trustee. You do not touch a single dime. And where are we supposed to live? Matthew asked quietly. You will live at the house in Oak Park, with me, with the kids. We will rent out your old house until you get back on your feet financially. And what about me? Victoria spat out. You are leaving, wherever you want to go, as long as it is far away from my grandchildren. You will be granted supervised visitation, twice a month, at a public location like a mall food court. You cannot do that. Watch me. I have documented proof that you actively alienated these children from their grandmother, that you psychologically manipulated them. Any family court judge in the state will hand me the gavel, especially when they see the financial records proving you embezzled their grandfather's estate. Victoria glared at me with the venom of a decapitated snake that is still trying to bite. You are completely destroying my life. No, I replied, with a calmness that surprised even me. I am finally setting the boundaries I should have set a decade ago. You destroyed your own life the day you decided to steal, lie, and manipulate your way to the top. Matthew, are you really going to let her do this? She screamed at my son. Are you going to sit there and let your mother humiliate me like this? Matthew looked at her with the hollow eyes of someone waking up from surgery to find a limb has been amputated. What exactly do you want me to do, Victoria? Do you want me to defend your embezzlement? Your lies? The fact that you looked my children in the eye and told them my mother was a danger to them? I did what I had to do to protect our family's future. You stole over $1 million. Matthew roared, slamming his fist on the table. The kids flinched. From my dead father, from my inheritance, and you lied to my face about it for 3 straight years. It was the first time in 4 years I had seen my son act like a grown man. Too little, too late, but it was something. Victoria shifted gears instantly. The tears began to flow, perfect and symmetrical, like she had turned on a faucet. Matthew, honey, yes, I made terrible mistakes, but I did it all for us. To give us the lifestyle we deserve. To give our children the absolute best. The absolute best would be having an honest mother. Harper suddenly interjected. We all turned to look at her, my 12-year-old granddaughter, standing tall, shaking but completely resolute. The absolute best would be not living in a house built on lies. The absolute best would be having my grandmother in my life for the past 4 years. Mason nodded, not fully grasping the words, but feeling the heavy gravity of the moment. Victoria reached a hand out toward her daughter. Sweetie, you do not understand how the adult world works. I understand that you are a liar, Harper said, taking a step back. I understand that you told Grandma to leave the room. And then you turned around and told us she refused to see us. I remember it, Mom. I was only 8, but I remember exactly what you did. The silence was deafening. Victoria, I said, pushing my chair back and standing up. You have until tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock to make your choice. You accept my terms, or I make a phone call to Arthur Hayes, and all of this goes to the district attorney. Here is my new cell phone number. I slid a sleek business card for the gallery across the marble table. A text message with the word I accept will suffice, and if I refuse, then I will see you in federal court. And believe me, with the paper trail I possess, you will not just lose custody of your children. You will lose your freedom. I walked toward the front door. Harper followed right behind me. Grandma, can we leave with you tonight? My chest physically ached. Not just yet, my sweet girl, but soon. Very soon. Mason ran up and wrapped his arms around my waist. He held on with the desperate strength of a child who has just found a lost toy. I missed you even when I could not remember you very well. I broke down crying right then and there. I held my grandchildren tight in that luxurious penthouse built entirely on deception, and I felt something deep inside me finally begin to heal. Matthew walked over to the door. Mom, I am so sorry. I am sorry for everything. I was a coward. I was a complete idiot. Yes, you were, I said, refusing to soften the blow. But you have a chance to redeem yourself. It starts tomorrow morning. Sign the divorce papers. Put this place on the market. Become the kind of man your father raised you to be. I do not know if I have it in me. Then you better learn fast. You are 42 years old. You still have time on the clock. I walked out of that apartment without sparing a single glance back at Victoria. She was sitting alone on her designer sofa, surrounded by fake luxury, utterly and completely isolated. I rode the elevator down to the lobby. I walked out onto the pavement. The freezing Chicago wind hit my face, and I took my first real breath in hours. My hands were shaking. The adrenaline was starting to crash. But there was something else, too. A feeling I had not experienced in 4 long years. Power. Not the power to dominate others. The power of a woman who finally knows her own worth. Who refuses to accept the crumbs swept off the table. Who draws a line in the sand and dares you to cross it. The next afternoon, at 3:47, my phone buzzed. I accept. Victoria. 2 words. Total and unconditional surrender. I dialed Attorney Hayes immediately. Arthur, pull the trigger on everything. Within 2 weeks, the divorce filings were processed. Matthew signed every page without a word of protest. Victoria signed them too. She hired her own lawyer, who took one look at my evidence binder and advised her that fighting would only end with her in handcuffs. The penthouse was listed on the market. Within a month, we had an all-cash buyer, a retired couple relocating from the East Coast. $3,500,000. The Chicago housing market had spiked. Every single cent of the equity was wired to an escrow account at Chase Bank, an irrevocable educational trust fund for Harper Reynolds and Mason Reynolds, exclusively for university tuition, graduate school, a first car, a down payment on a starter home. I was named the sole trustee until they turned 25. Matthew and the kids packed up and moved into the Oak Park house with me. The big old house that had echoed with emptiness for 4 years was suddenly bursting with life. Backpacks dumped in the hallway, laughter echoing from the kitchen, siblings fighting over the television remote. I renovated the entire second floor. The dusty guest rooms became their own personal sanctuaries. Harper painted her walls a soft mint green. Mason wanted navy blue, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I hired a brilliant child psychologist, Dr. Miller. 3 sessions every week. 1 individual session for each child. 1 family counseling session on Friday afternoons. Matthew also went to his own therapist on Tuesday mornings. The first few months were incredibly rocky. Harper suffered from terrible nightmares. Mason would throw massive tantrums over the smallest things. Matthew drifted around the house like a zombie grieving his past life. But slowly, day by day, the wounds began to close. One afternoon, Harper walked into the kitchen while I was brewing coffee. "Grandma, can you teach me how to bake your apple pie?" We spent the whole afternoon baking together. She told me about her new public high school, less glamorous, but much kinder. She gossiped about a girl she claimed to hate, but who she actually had a massive crush on. Teenage secrets that a grandmother guards like state secrets. Mason started calling for me every night before he fell asleep. "Grandma, tell me a story about Grandpa William." And I would tell him stories. About the time William tried to build a treehouse and the whole thing collapsed 3 days later. About the time he tried to teach me how to drive a manual transmission and we nearly stalled out in an intersection 3 times. About how I fell in love with him in the 9th grade and never, ever fell out of love. Matthew landed a new job. The salary was lower than the inflated numbers Victoria used to brag about, but it was honest work. A logistics manager at a shipping warehouse. $75,000 a year. Enough to cover his share of the household groceries and utility bills. One Saturday morning, I found him out in the backyard, pruning the rose bushes. "Your father planted those the year you were born," I told him from the porch. "He always said they would grow up alongside you." Matthew broke down. He sobbed into his hands in a way he had not cried since he was a little boy. I walked down the steps and held him. I did not say, "I forgive you," because true forgiveness is a long road, not a magic word. But I held him while he cried, and that meant something. Victoria adhered to the custody agreement. She saw the kids 2 Saturdays a month at the food court in the local mall. 2 hours, strictly monitored by a court-appointed social worker. The kids only went because the judge mandated it for the first 6 months. Eventually, Harper started refusing to go. "I do not want to see her, Grandma. She just makes me feel anxious. I never forced her." Mason kept going for a while longer, more out of a sense of pity than actual affection, if I had to guess. Victoria tried to reach out to me exactly once. A text message. "Margaret, I know you despise me, but maybe we could sit down and talk, woman to woman like." I blocked the number without typing a reply. You do not negotiate peace treaties with the person who stole 4 years of your life. The gallery in Santa Fe continued to thrive. Chloe was handling the day-to-day operations now. I flew down much less frequently. I preferred spending my time in Oak Park with my grandkids. But I was still the majority owner. I still called the shots. An aggressive buyout offer came in from a massive art conglomerate in New York. $3,500,000 for the gallery. I turned it down flat. "It is not about the money anymore," I explained over the phone to Chloe. "It is because I built it. Because I laid those bricks when everyone else assumed I was dead and buried. Besides," she laughed through the receiver, "you need to show your granddaughter that women can build their own empires." Exactly. A year after that disastrous dinner in the Gold Coast, Harper won a regional youth art competition. Her painting, Severed Roots, depicted an ancient oak tree with half of its root system hacked away, but vibrant new green shoots sprouting from the stump. We hosted the gallery showing at Rustic Roots. Professional critics, wealthy collectors, tourists mingling with the locals. And there was my 13-year-old granddaughter, standing tall and explaining her artistic vision with a quiet confidence that reminded me so much of myself. "This painting is about families that get shattered, but find a way to piece themselves back together," Harper told the crowd. "It is about my grandmother, who taught me that it is never too late in life to start entirely over," I cried. "Obviously, Chloe had to hand me a fistful of tissues. Matthew was standing in the back corner of the room, watching silently. Our eyes locked across the gallery. He gave me a slow nod. It was not total absolution, but it was recognition. It was deep respect. On the drive back to the hotel that night, with Mason fast asleep in the back seat, Harper asked me a question. "Grandma, do you think you will ever fully forgive Dad?" I thought about it for a long time, watching the desert highway roll by. Forgiveness is not black and white, Harper. It is a shade of gray. It is a daily choice. Your dad is putting in the work, and that counts for a lot. And what about Mom, your mother? I honestly do not know. Some people break things inside of you that can never be glued back together. But I do not carry hatred in my heart anymore. I just carry very firm boundaries. What is the difference? Harper nodded slowly, as if she understood the weight of the world much better than a teenager ever should. And as I drove through the quiet streets, with my grandchildren safely tucked in my car, with my life completely rebuilt from the ashes, I had a thought. This is what victory feels like. It is not flawless, but it is undeniably real. 18 months passed since that night at the penthouse. Our lives settled into a comfortable new rhythm. It was not picture perfect. You carry the scars forever. But it worked. It was almost beautiful in its messy imperfection. Matthew became a truly present father, not a perfect sitcom dad, but a man who showed up and tried. He drove Mason to early morning soccer practices in the freezing cold. He sat at the kitchen island helping Harper with algebra, even though he was terrible at math himself. He cooked dinner every Thursday night. It usually tasted awful, but he cooked it with love. One evening, while I was brewing a pot of decaf after dinner, he leaned against the counter. "Mom, I am never going to be able to give you back those 4 years." "No," I replied, looking him in the eye. "You cannot. Will there ever come a day when you stop looking at me like..." "Like what?" "Like I murdered a part of our relationship." I set my coffee mug down. "Matthew, you murdered my blind faith in you, the naive idea that sharing DNA means unconditional loyalty. But we are building something entirely new right now, something much more honest. It is not the fairy tale, but it is real." He nodded slowly. Tears welled up in his eyes. "Is it enough?" "It is going to have to be." It was not the heartwarming Hallmark movie ending people want to hear, but it was the truth, and the truth, no matter how sharp the edges, is always better than a comfortable lie. Harper thrived in her new environment. She started her freshman year at Oak Park and River Forest High School, a massive public school, excellent academics, completely free. Miles away from the superficial cliques of her old private academy, she found a new group of friends, girls with loud opinions, big dreams, and actual depth. One Friday afternoon, she brought 3 of them over. They made grilled cheese sandwiches in the kitchen. They debated feminism, modern art, and local politics. I sat in the living room, pretending to read a novel while I eavesdropped. "My grandmother is an entrepreneur," I heard Harper brag proudly. "She owns an art gallery in Santa Fe. She started her business when she was 68. Her friends were amazed, asking a million questions. Harper told them my story. Edited, of course, skipping over the ugliest betrayals, but the core message remained intact. That night, she came into my room and hugged me before bed. "Thank you for showing me that women do not need a prince to come save them." "Who taught you that?" "You do, every single day." Mason was the one who struggled the most. He was only 5 years old when they erased me from his life. His memories of me were blurry and disjointed. The therapy sessions helped, but progress was agonizingly slow. He suffered from night terrors where Victoria would pack him into a car and drive away, and I would never find him. He would wake up screaming in the dark. I would sprint down the hall to his bedroom. I would wrap my arms around him. "I am right here. I am never leaving you. Do you promise?" "I promise with my whole heart." One Saturday, he asked me to help him make a photo album. We dug through the dusty boxes in the attic, finding pictures from when he was a toddler, from the day Harper was born, photos of William, of the family we used to be. "Tell me about the before times," he would ask, pointing a small finger at the faded Polaroids, and I would tell him, "This is you at 2 years old when you fell off the playground slide. Your grandpa was crying harder than you were. This was your very first Christmas. William dressed up in the cheapest Santa suit you have ever seen. Rebuilding a child's memories is artisanal labor. It is painstaking, detailed work, but it is entirely necessary. The gallery had a record-breaking fiscal year, $5 million in gross sales. We opened a second, smaller location in Scottsdale, Arizona. Chloe ran the entire operation now. I acted as a silent partner, more of an investor than an employee, but I still flew down. 1 week out of every month in the Southwest, the kids came with me during their school breaks. Harper would run the cash register. Mason would chase lizards around the Adobe courtyards. We hosted an exhibition for an incredible artist, Barbara Reynolds, a 63-year-old painter who channeled the trauma of domestic abuse into sprawling, triumphant canvases. Her signature piece, Uprising, depicted a circle of elderly women holding each other up during a storm. The Museum of Modern Art in New York purchased it for their permanent collection. $150,000. Barbara wept in my office. That is more money than I have seen in my entire lifetime. I slid the certified check across the desk. You earned every penny of it. Your art has immense value. How did you know? She asked me, wiping her eyes. How did you know how to start over, so late in life, and actually win? Because trauma is like fertilizer. It either buries you in the dirt, or it makes you grow. I chose to grow. Victoria slowly faded out of our narrative. She stopped showing up for her supervised visitations. She skipped one Saturday, then another. Then she simply stopped returning the social worker's phone calls. Harper did not even ask where she was. Mason did. Does Mommy not love us anymore? Mommy loves you in the only way she knows how, I told a white lie. But sometimes adults do not know how to love people properly. Do you love us properly? I try to do it right every single day. I found out later, through Chloe, who seemingly knows everyone's business, that Victoria had relocated to Miami. She was managing a high-end spa at a luxury resort. She got married again, to a retired real estate developer from New York who was pushing 70. Old money, obviously. I felt absolutely nothing. Like finishing a terribly written book, closing the cover, and tossing it in the donation bin. William would have turned 78 that year. I drove the kids out to the cemetery in the suburbs. It was the first time they had visited his grave since they were old enough to remember. This is your grandfather, I said, standing before the headstone. The kindest man I have ever had the privilege of knowing. We pulled the weeds around the plaque. We laid down fresh carnations. Mason looked up at me. Is he mad at us for forgetting about him? The dead do not hold grudges, my sweet boy. They just want the people they left behind to find happiness. Matthew was standing a few feet away, crying silently into his scarf. Dad, I am so sorry. I am sorry I wasn't the man you raised me to be. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You still have time to become that man. You make that choice every morning when you wake up. The moment that brought me true, final closure arrived when I least expected it. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon. We were grilling burgers in the backyard. Matthew was doing a terrible job managing the charcoal grill. Harper was teasing him relentlessly. Mason was throwing a tennis ball for the dog we had recently adopted from the shelter. Rusty, a scruffy terrier mix who had claimed the living room rug as his own. The doorbell rang. I answered it. It was Chloe. She had flown in unannounced. Margaret, we have a massive offer on the table. An international fine arts conglomerate. They want to acquire the Rustic Roots brand completely. $4 million in cash. They keep the gallery name. They keep all the current employees on payroll. And they want to retain you as a senior consultant. $250,000 a year for 5 years, just for consulting. I sat down heavily on the living room sofa. Chloe looked concerned. Are you okay? I am. Just processing it. $4 million up front, plus $250,000 a year. Financial security for the rest of my life. Generational wealth for my grandkids. Total, unadulterated freedom. What do you want to do? Chloe asked gently. I looked out the bay window into the backyard. Matthew was burning the hot dogs. Harper was taking a selfie in the afternoon sun. Mason was giggling uncontrollably as the dog tackled him into the grass. I need to sleep on it. Give me 1 week. That night, after the house went completely quiet, I sat in my armchair with a mug of decaf, watching the moonlight spill across the floorboards. I traced the entire journey in my mind, from that devastating March evening to this exact moment. I thought about the Margaret from 4 years ago, shattered into pieces, sobbing in her unwashed pajamas, staring at a phone that refused to ring. I thought about the Margaret who had sumped her way out of that suffocating darkness, who learned how to use Instagram hashtags, who swept centuries of dust out of an abandoned shop, who built an empire out of absolutely nothing. I thought about my grandchildren sleeping down the hall, about Matthew trying so hard to scrub the stains off his soul, about the flawed, chaotic, beautiful family I now had. And I knew exactly what my answer was. I called Chloe the next morning. I accept the offer. Sell the gallery. Are you absolutely certain? I am completely certain. I do not have anything left to prove. Not to myself. Not to anyone else. We closed the sale in March, exactly 4 years to the month after they had erased me. The $4 million cleared my account. I distributed the funds with surgical precision. $1 million went directly into Harper and Mason's educational trusts. Their futures were ironclad. They could attend Ivy League schools if they worked hard enough. $500,000 went to Matthew, with strict stipulations. He had to remain in weekly therapy. He had to maintain steady employment for 2 consecutive years. And he was legally barred from ever giving a single red cent to Victoria. $500,000 went to the charitable foundation I established, the Uprising Women's Fund, a nonprofit dedicated to providing grants, business training, and zero-interest microloans to female entrepreneurs over the age of 60. $1 million rolled over into high-yield mutual funds to generate passive income. My retirement nest egg. The remaining million sat safely in a high-interest savings account. For medical emergencies, for spontaneous vacations, for whatever life decided to throw my way next. The day the final paperwork was signed, I walked into the house in Oak Park. Matthew had cooked dinner to celebrate. Lasagna. It was a culinary disaster, burned black around the edges and cold in the center. But he had made it from scratch. "We are celebrating you, Mom," he said, looking nervous. The 4 of us sat around the dining room table. Rusty sat under Harper's chair, waiting for someone to drop a piece of garlic bread. Harper raised her glass of lemonade. "I want to propose a toast to the most badass grandmother in the entire country." "Harper, watch your mouth," Matthew scolded, though he was trying not to smile. "But it is the truth." Mason chimed in, defending his sister. I laughed. I wiped a tear from my eye. I reached across the table and held their hands. And in that exact moment, sitting in a kitchen smelling of burned cheese, with a begging dog at my feet and my beautifully broken family surrounding me, I had an epiphany. This is what real justice looks like. It is not the kind of justice you see in Hollywood movies. It is not some spectacular revenge plot where the villain is dramatically destroyed in the town square. It is the quiet kind of justice, the kind that lets you sleep deeply through the night, the kind where you manage to salvage the things that actually matter, where you discover exactly who you are without needing validation from the people who threw you away. Victoria stole 4 years of my life. I built a multi-million-dollar business in that exact same time frame. She is living down in Miami, playing trophy wife to a wealthy senior citizen. I am living in my own home, surrounded by the grandchildren I adore, with my dignity fully restored. Who really won the war? Epilogue. 1 year later, Harper turned 15. She did not want a massive Sweet 16 party at a country club. She wanted an intimate dinner in Santa Fe. We flew down and invited 15 people. Her closest friends from the public high school, Chloe and the gallery staff. Maria, the elderly ceramicist who taught me that pain is just clay waiting to be molded. Attorney Hayes, who handled all the trusts. Dr. Miller, who guided us through the darkest hours of therapy. And Matthew, of course. Harper stood up and gave a short speech. 2 years ago, I didn't really know who my grandmother was. That relationship was stolen from me. Today, I know that she is the most resilient woman on the face of the earth. And I want to be exactly like her when I grow up. A woman who stands back up when she is pushed down, who builds her own castles, and who refuses to accept a single ounce less than what she truly deserves. The whole room erupted in applause. I cried. Obviously. Later that evening, while we were slicing the chocolate cake, Mason tugged on my cardigan sleeve. Grandma, can you take me to Grandpa William's workshop? What workshop? Sweet Boy? The one he had in the backyard in Oak Park. Dad told me Grandpa used to build things out of wood. It was not a real workshop. It was just a rusty metal shed by the fence. But yes, William kept all his tools in there. When we flew back home, I took him out there. We pulled open the creaky metal doors. It smelled like damp cedar and the passage of time. The tools were exactly where William had left them. The table saw, the claw hammers, jars of rusted nails, yellowed blueprints for patio furniture he never got around to finishing. Mason touched the tools with the quiet reverence of an archaeologist unearthing a tomb. Do you think I could learn how to do woodworking? Why do you want to do that? Because I want to build things with my own two hands. Just like Grandpa did. Just like you did with your business. I pulled him into a tight hug. Of course you can. I will find you a master carpenter to teach you. That night, after the kids were in bed, I sat out on the back patio. The rose bushes William had planted decades ago were massive now. They were creeping up the side of the brick wall. Matthew walked out carrying 2 mugs of decaf coffee. He sat down in the patio chair next to me without asking. We sipped our coffee in comfortable silence for 5 minutes. Mom, he said softly, staring out into the dark yard, I am never going to be able to repay you for what I took. No, you won't. Will you ever stop? Stop what, Matthew? Stop looking at me like a son who completely failed you. I set my ceramic mug down on the glass table. I looked him straight in the eyes. I look at you as a son who made a catastrophic mistake, who caused a tremendous amount of pain, but who is waking up every day and trying to fix the damage. It is not the perfect scenario, but it is real. Is it enough? You ask me that exact question every single month, because I need to hear the answer. Then I will give you a different answer tonight. Yes, Matthew, it is enough. It is not perfect, but it is enough, he cried. Again, my 43-year-old son, weeping quietly on the back patio. I reached out and pulled him in. But this time was different. There was no hesitation, no invisible wall of resentment between us. I forgive you, I whispered, and as the words left my mouth, I felt the absolute truth in them. It is not a forgiveness that erases the past with a magic wand. It is a forgiveness that acknowledges the deep scar, but actively chooses not to reopen the wound every single day. 2 months later, I received a completely unexpected piece of mail. From Victoria. A handwritten letter postmarked from Miami, Florida. Margaret, I am not expecting you to write back. I just needed to put this down on paper. You were right. About everything. I was a manipulative, lying, thieving woman. I took a wrecking ball to our family because I genuinely believed that money was the only currency that mattered in this world. Now I live in a waterfront mansion in Miami, married to a man who buys me whatever I point at, and I have never felt more hollow in my entire life. My children do not call me on my birthday. When I force a phone call, their answers are short, cold, obligatory. I have lost Harper and Mason permanently, and the agonizing part is knowing that I did it all to myself. I am not asking for your forgiveness. That would be a joke. I just wanted you to know that you won. You were right. Money cannot buy anything authentic. And I traded every authentic thing I had for a bank balance. I hope my children have a beautiful life with you. I know they will. Because you actually know how to love people unconditionally. I never did. V. I read the letter 3 times in my kitchen. I felt absolutely nothing. No smug satisfaction. No lingering resentment. Not even a shred of pity. Just a quiet, empty space where a raging fire of hatred used to burn. I folded the letter and dropped it into the junk drawer. I never wrote back, but I kept the letter. Because it was the final period at the end of a very long sentence. Confirmation that the universe's justice does not always announce itself with a marching band. Sometimes, it is deafeningly silent. It is simply watching the person who tried to destroy you slowly dismantle their own life from the inside out. Today, as I am writing this down, I am 73 years old. The Uprising Women's Fund has provided capital to 43 senior female entrepreneurs. 3 of those women now run businesses grossing over $1 million a year. Harper is a freshman studying art history at Northwestern University. She still lives at home with me. She is in absolutely no rush to move into a dorm. "Why would I leave, Grandma?" she jokes. "All the good food is here." Mason spent the summer apprenticing with Mr. Henderson, a 78-year-old master carpenter in the city. He builds breathtaking custom furniture. He has already sold 4 of his pieces. He is 14 years old. Matthew has a new girlfriend, Sarah. She is divorced and has 2 kids of her own. She is a grounded, quiet woman who cooks an incredible roast and does not constantly chase after things she cannot afford. They get along beautifully, taking it slow, without rushing to the altar. I still do consulting work for the gallery group twice a month. I am still learning new things. I took a digital photography masterclass last spring. My photos are atrocious, but I have a wonderful time taking them. I travel whenever the mood strikes me. I flew to Charleston 3 times this year, to Savannah, up to the Pacific Northwest. This country is massive and breathtaking, and I finally have the time to see it. I go out to dinner with a gentleman sometimes, Thomas, a retired structural engineer, a widower. We grab coffee on Thursday mornings. We go to the matinee at the movie theater. Nothing heavy, just pleasant, warm company. My life is not a fairy tale. There are mornings when the arthritis in my lower back is blinding. There are evenings when the grief of losing William hits me so hard it knocks the wind out of my lungs. There are nights when the quiet house feels a little too quiet, but those days are heavily outnumbered by the brilliant ones. The afternoons where Mason drags me to the garage to show me a mahogany coffee table he just sanded down. The evenings where Harper brings her study group over and they bake brownies in my oven. The rainy mornings where Rusty curls up on my feet while I read the Sunday paper. The days where I simply get to exist. At peace. Under my own roof, inside a life that absolutely no one can ever threaten to take away from me, because I built every square inch of it with my own 2 hands. Whenever I do interviews for the foundation, journalists always ask me the same question. What is your advice to older women who are experiencing sudden abandonment by their own families? And my answer never changes. I tell them that family love is not a constitutional right, that sharing the same bloodline does not guarantee loyalty, that you can easily be erased from the lives of the very people you assumed would hold your hand on your deathbed. But I also tell them that you hold the pen to the next chapter. You can stay in bed with the curtains drawn, crying into your pillow, waiting for the phone to ring, slowly dying from the poison of false hope, or you can force yourself to stand up. You can wash your face. And you can build something that belongs entirely to you. Something with foundations so deep that no one can ever bulldoze it. I promise you it will not be easy. It will hurt like hell. There will be sleepless nights and Tuesday afternoons where you just want to throw in the towel. But waiting on the other side of that valley is your dignity. Your total peace of mind, the unshakable certainty that you are worth infinitely more than they ever made you feel. And trust me, ladies, that certainty is worth far more than any inheritance check, more than any luxury penthouse in the Gold Coast, more than any conditional love you have to get on your knees and beg for. This is my story. It does not end in a spectacular explosion of cinematic revenge. It ends with something infinitely better. It ends with me finally meeting myself, respecting myself, living entirely on my own terms. They erased me as if I had never taken a breath on this earth. And I resurrected as a woman they will never have the power to erase again. Because now I know exactly what I am worth. And that knowledge, my sisters, is what real power looks like. End of the recording. If this story struck a chord with you, if it brought up memories of your own family dynamics, of betrayals you have kept completely silent about, or of the self-worth you are currently trying to claw back, please let me know down in the comments section. Tell me what city or state you are watching from. Let me know if there is a Margaret in your own life, or if you are currently fighting to become one yourself. Hit the like button if you believe that older women deserve the utmost respect, basic dignity, and the opportunity to completely reinvent themselves no matter how many candles are on their birthday cake. And make sure to subscribe to the channel, because every single week I share stories of real women who stood back up when the rest of the world assumed they would stay down for the count. Because it is never, ever too late to become the woman you were always meant to be. Thank you so much for listening to my confession. And always remember, your true wealth is not measured by the things you own, but by the things you refuse to let anyone steal from you. Your worth, your peace, your undeniable dignity, those things belong exclusively to you, forever.